Yo, what's up, Unemployed Nation? It's your boy, Unemployed Graduate, and yeah, sorry for the long break. It's life happened, and you gotta adapt, something, overcome. Are you tired of being judged for your intellect? Are you tired of pouring your heart out only to be rejected? And especially, are you tired of failing your tests? And by tests, I mean the recruitment tests. Well, if you're tired of all these, look no further, because in this video, I'm going to talk to you about a little bit more about the recruitment tests, aka the phase 2 of the whole recruitment process when you are applying for graduate programs in the UK. Now, strangely enough, many of my friends are deathly afraid by this stage, to which I say, well, this is actually my favorite one. So why is that? These tests are typically formed of 3 different parts. You usually have the behavioral test, like personality and stuff, numerical reasoning, and verbal reasoning. Sometimes they might even throw in a little video interview at the end, like maybe 2 to 3 questions about why you want to work there, why are you interested about the role, why do you think you're a good fit. But yeah, those usually don't really happen, so we're not going to talk about that as much. We're going to talk about that in the next episode, so stay tuned. So what exactly are these tests and how do we pass them? Well, let's delve into the simplest one, the behavioral test. So the behavioral tests consist of multiple choice questions related to your personality, but said in a corporate manner. So, for example, you might have some questions that will ask you, oh, are you more of an organized person or are you more of a chaotic person? Are you somebody who likes working in a diligent and rule-filled manner, or are you somebody who likes to try and test new methods? In essence, these tests, by giving you questions over and over, sometimes one that will repeat themselves quite often, they're trying to see, with some other algorithms behind, what's your personality, because they want to see if you are a right fit for the role and the company as well. Some of them will include a slider where on one side of it there's a statement, on the other side there's another statement. So like, again, organized or chaotic, or are you more sociable or introverted, are you resilient or not, stuff like that. Or they're gonna make you select whether a certain statement is the most like you or not. Naturally, since the companies are trying to see if you're also a right fit for the role, for example, project management roles where organization is key and following rules and systems and that is essential for you to emphasize while answering those questions. Whereas if you're in a more creative role, such as if you go into marketing, like content production, for example, and they're asking a lot of questions regarding, oh, are you more imaginative? Are you more creative? Then you should focus on emphasizing that as well. Then there's also something else that I've seen in the tests, the hundreds of tests that I've done so far. Some tests will require you to select 2 out of 3 statements that are most like you. Now, this is catchy because it's not something hard to do, because you're literally just answering stuff about your own behavior, about your own personality. You know, it's kind of fun, but there are also some immediate disqualifiers. So, for example, during one of these tests, if you have the opportunity to do so, do not make them think that you will miss deadlines, that you are not open to criticism, and that you can't collaborate. In this day and age, these 3 things are incredibly essential to each role, frankly. You will never be siloed doing your own stuff at all. But yeah, in this test that I was doing, where I had to select 2 out of 3 negatives, I was given these things. So I'm most likely to miss deadlines. I do not take criticism. I do not take feedback well, or like I react badly to feedback. It was something along those lines. And then something else, which was pretty insignificant, like, I don't know, something about customers. then from, as you might be picking up, I've selected the other two that said deadlines and something else, not the criticism, and I actually got onto the next stage. Because again, you don't want to let them know, to let them think that you would not take criticism properly. If I am to rank them, the worst thing you could say is that you can't take criticism, then you can't work collaboratively, and then you're missing deadlines. Companies are fine with you missing deadlines as long as you are a likable person and you're at least decent at your job. But the hard part is actually getting into the company, first of all. So the general rule is that the worse an answer sounds like, do not pick that. But yeah, other than that, it's a pretty easy test to pass. I'm sure you got this without any extra preparation. Just make sure you avoid the objectively bad answers. Cool. The numerical reasoning test. If you're a business student, not in STEM or anything, then you might have to worry about this one for a bit. And yeah, everybody likes to clown on business students, but if you haven't worked with numbers in a while, these tests might catch you on the wrong foot, in the meaning that they're timed and they require you to do lots of calculations. Sometimes even the questions are jumbled in such a way that you have to decipher them in order to get to the proper result. So, for example, a recent test I had to do was at Centrica, and one of their questions was like, look at this graph, then calculate how much a bungalow, how much energy a bungalow is spending on central heating as a percentage of the total energy consumption of a detached house. My goodness, I spent quite a bit, I think about like 15 seconds trying to decipher this question, and then the rest calculating everything and putting everything in order. Of course, you have to use some notepaper when these questions are kind of getting out of hand, kind of have to traverse a labyrinth in order to get to what they're trying to make you calculate. But okay, I know how to do percentages, but in what world will I have, during my job, have to calculate such a jumbled calculation? But yeah, so for example, what you could come across during these tests are looking at graphs, looking at charts, making calculations based on those observations, doing percentages, calculating the percentage increase and the percentage decrease, calculating errors and correcting those errors. You could come across a lot of questions, but written differently. But in a general sense, companies really like you doing percentages, because most of the people who are not used to that are gonna mess them up, especially if you don't understand the question. I've gone through to look at some websites, and I've done some numerical reasoning tests on some practice websites. Unfortunately, if you're trying to look for practice tests, most of them are priced. Like, I have to pay 40, 50, 70 pounds more for a limited time even to train to get into a job. That's mad. Especially considering that you could be applying to jobs and doing these tests for free. But I guess then you're sacrificing the job for practice. But in this day and age, you kind of have to do that, not gonna lie. If, just like me, you haven't done numbers and percentages in a long time, or at least within your degree, then it's a wise idea to search up some of these sites and exercise. Unfortunately, there are a few trial tests that you could take, but as I've said, most of them will be paid, which is quite sad. From my personal experience, I would recommend you to train percentages a lot, especially increases and decreases, and how to look around at a graph and at tables without confusing yourself. Because when you have a lot of data in front of you, especially if you can't somehow remove it with a nice user interface, then you might get yourself lost in the numbers. And yeah, it happens more often than not. But yeah, you'll be able to work these out really easily if you train a little bit more, if you do some practice. The verbal reasoning tests. From my experience, I'd say these are easy peasy, but that's only, I'd say, if you're very confident in your English. So in your typical test, you will be confronted with walls of texts, and after that you'll have some questions that will ask you stuff about some facts in that text, and they'll ask if that's true, false, or if you cannot say. Based on that text, you'll be able to answer that properly, and you should have enough time to do so. But then again, if you're very confident in your English, sometimes they will give you some extra instructions, like, okay, assume this thing is true, or assume this thing is not true. So before you delve in and answer that question with true, false, or cannot say, unless being told to do so, do not make any other assumptions, even though you know the answer outside of the text. Always relate the answer to the text inside. So for example, they could say that in the walls of text that nowadays frozen food is increasing the salt intake of adults, and then ask you, okay, so in the text it says that more than 75% of an adult's salt intake is nowadays done by the consumption of frozen foods. Well, in this instance, even though that might be true, you cannot say. So you wouldn't say false because there's no percentages mentioned within my initial fake scenario, fake text, but you also cannot say. Do you get what I mean? Similarly to the numerical ones, I've gone ahead and looked at some websites, and you also have some free trial practice tests that you can do online. They shouldn't be too hard, and even though you're not too confident in your English, by doing a couple of these, just do 2 rounds of these kind of timed tests, you should be good to go, and you should catch the drift of how to actually work through these. Just in general, watch out for what is being asked of you, follow the instructions down to a T, read the text, reread it, because you will have to reread it, and pay attention to your answer. The way I usually do it, I see the text, I read it wholly, then I see the questions, I read all of the questions if there are multiple questions on the platform, and if I don't know the answer to one, or if I am confused about one, I would go back to the text and reread the paragraph where I could find an answer to. And if I can't find it, then I just say cannot say. Just don't be afraid to say cannot say in there, because that's the point. I mean, if you are a university graduate, especially if you've done a master's, I wouldn't worry about you not understanding something in English, and you shouldn't worry as well. But if it's your first time doing these type of tests and you haven't been in the recruitment process to other companies too, then definitely do some practice tests, because as you might know, overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer. So that is all. Don't stress too much about these tests. They're not as complicated as they may seem, even though you're doing them for the first time. Make sure you practice beforehand, don't say the wrong things, and you should be getting to your video interview soon enough. And about that video interview, I'll be seeing you in the next episode. Bye bye!